Yeah.
All right, as you can see, I did Herman Ebbinghaus. And who is Herman Ebbinghaus? Herman is German, and he was born in 1850, and he is the son of a merchant, and he was actually born in Barmen, and his dad was a merchant in Barmen, obviously. He went to school at the age of 17, and he went to the University of Bonn. And he also studied at Berlin and Halle, which those were two universities that he actually went back to work at. He served in the Army in 1870 and 1871, so just for 1 year. And then when he was done with serving in the Army, he came back and he finished his PhD with high honors. Who or what inspired Herman? After he came back from the war, he traveled to France, I think it was, and he read Fechner's Elemente der Psycho, I don't even know how to say that, but I'm pretty sure it says Elements of Psychophysics. And he was captivated by Fechner's descriptions of psychophysics and became fired with the conviction that psychology, like psychophysics, could become a natural science. He believed that procedures similar to Fechner's objective, psychophysical procedures, could be developed and applied to higher mental processes. Sometime around 1877, Ebbinghaus set out to develop such procedures for studying the higher mental processes of memory. And memory was kind of it was like the only thing that he did. So that was what he based his life around after reading his work, Fechner's works. Herman's experience on memory. So some people before him had done things about memory, but it wasn't very popular until Herman came around. And but his experiments were first systematic experimental investigations. They were highly original because he didn't have co-workers or people that believed the same thing as him. He was all by himself. He didn't have people to study on because there was no one. And he didn't have a teacher to give him techniques and procedures. So he was not a member of the Department of Psychology, so he didn't have a lab to do it in. So basically he did all of his experiments in his own home on himself. And yes, he did them on himself. And okay, so he published a lot of books, and they're all in German, or most of them are in German. But along with publishing books on memory, he invented nonsense syllables, forgetting curve, and spacing effect. Herman realized early that familiarity has a powerful effect on learning and memory, so he set out to devise unfamiliar materials for his experiments. The result was nonsense syllables. So I don't know if anybody's taken cognition and learning, but last semester we actually did that. He shows himself like nonsense syllables, so like DTP or something that he can't associate with something else, and he would see how well he could remember it. So he would put them in a sequence of 17, and he would time it out to where he could see if he could remember them. So Herman first examined the relationship between the amount of material to be memorized and the time and effort required to learn it to the creation of complete mastery. So basically he wanted to be able to recite all the nonsense syllables and not just a few. To do this, he read a loud list of nonsense syllables and repeated them back, all in time to a metronome. And like I said, he did this all by himself. So he didn't have anyone to help him do this at all. He recorded the number of repetitions necessary before he could repeat lists with different numbers of nonsense syllables perfectly and without hesitation. And he found out that longer lists required more repetition, obviously, before mastery. Their relationship was not a simple one. The forgetting curve. The forgetting curve describes the exponential loss of information that one has learned. The sharpest decline occurs in the first 20 minutes, and decay is significant within the first hour. The curve levels off after about a day, and that is the forgetting curve. You can't really see it, but it says forgetting curve, and then over here that says memory, and then this is time down here. Learning curve. The learning curve described by Ebbinghaus refers to how fast one learns information. The sharpest increase occurs after the first try and then gradually evens out, meaning that less and less new information is retained after each repetition. And we also learned all this in cognition and learning last year, so you should all know. The effects of Herman's research. Herman's research was widely recognized as a highly significant contribution to the scientific development of psychology. For the first time, the higher mental function has been studied experimentally. The success of Herman's memory experiments established a paradigm of laboratory experimentation on memory, which dominated psychology for 90 years. So basically, his experiments that he did on the nonsense syllables were, people kind of got interested in it, and they started doing more experiments on memory after his experiments. And there are the references. Any questions?
What do you think his number one contribution to psychology is?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I would say his number one contribution to psychology was to put into perspective like memory, because I don't think anybody really like thought about memory that way, and so he actually put memory to where you could like do experiments with it. So I think that was one of his biggest contributions. And he also taught us about how like to study, like, because we use that now. Like we learned that, and like I said, we learned that in cognition and learning of how to study and what was like the right way to study and like memorizing stuff.
He also did publish an article on testing school children's intelligence, and one of his fill in the blank or the finish the sentence is still used in the Binet-Simon scale of intelligence to this day, which is kind of awesome. That's quite a legacy from 1902 to now. 100 years it's lasted. But I'd agree with you that the whole idea, the learning curves and all that, he originated that whole idea, which is still being used today. You guys have any questions? When you're looking at your form? Okay then.